you guys needed a little pick-me-up, so I looked it up. We have exactly 1 month left of school. Woo! If that stresses you out, I'm sorry. Here are your 3 announcements. First of all, there are prayer meetings every Thursday at 7 p.m. Priscilla is the head of the prayer team, and she would love to have you guys join. So those are in the prayer room, which is through all the doors, down all the stairs you can, and then it's right there. So just keep going downstairs and through doors. Our next announcement, Hannah's looking at me, is the women's retreat, which is this weekend. We are leaving Friday at 4:30, I believe, and we will be back Saturday around noon. So if you haven't signed up yet and you're a lady, you should sign up like right now, because we need your RSVP like now. It's only $5, so if you need to pay still, make sure to pay Alicia. And talk with Alicia if you're concerned about signing up. Okay, third, we have men's study night. I get to say this again, I'm excited. On April 12th at 6:30, they are studying What is a Man? And they're really excited about it, so you should go if you're a guy and you want to know what a man is. Talk to Jesse or Jeremy for more information.
How's everybody doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. I promise not to get COVID and cancel the men's study again, so you should come if you're a man on Monday. Alright, good. Did anybody else get like church camp vibes when Bryn's doing the announcements? Is that just me?
What's church camp?
Alright, cool. Thanks, David. Alright, so tonight we're going to talk about work. But before we do, is there anybody who wants to prove that they've learned our verse for the semester and say it for everybody? I was brave enough to do it last week. Is there anybody else who wants to take a run at it? Anybody at all?
Might get a gift card out of it.
You might just get straight up cash.
Okay, I can try. I don't know the reference.
You see how much money I'm willing to put on
I
the
don't
line.
need cash. That needs to be a couple.
Alright. Got an Abe Lincoln,
Yeah?
if you can say the verse for everyone.
Okay.
And Avery's our judge if you do it right or not.
Do I need a mic? Can I just do it?
Just yell.
Okay. Where there is no prophetic vision, the people cast off restraint, but blessed is he who keeps the law.
Let's sing it.
Cool.
I mean, it's really good job.
Thanks, Avery.
Alright.
Do I actually get a phone?
Yeah, you get a 5.
What?
Alright. So, tonight we're talking about work. So I thought I'd start off with a question. How many of you have ever had a job before?
Me? Wow.
Yeah? How many of you currently have a job? How many of you plan to have a job in the future? Alright, so I think this should pretty much apply to just about all of us. Have you ever had a job that you didn't like before? Wow, I was really, really quick on that. Taco Bell?
Actually, no.
Hy-Vee?
Yep, dishwasher.
Gotcha. Alright, so is there anybody brave enough to share, like, the worst job they ever had? Bryn, you got one?
Yes, once I was cleaning an apartment and I had to dig fish, like the aquarium rocks, out of the toilet because they just dumped the whole aquarium. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. That's kind of gross. John, what do you got?
Papa John's.
Papa John's? Better ingredients, better pizza? Papa John's. Alright. Like the pizza place, or you work for the actual Papa John?
Yes.
Weird.
Someone asked me if I wasn't Papa.
That's a weird question to ask. Are you the Papa?
I don't know.
I think they have talk shows about that kind of thing. Alright, so, my very first job was garbage. Literally, I worked at a recycling trailer, and people would bring us they're supposed to sort the recyclables, and we would put them in bins, but people would just bring us their garbage, and then we would have to like pick through garbage and recycle things. So that was cool. That was a fun first job. But I had a job that I really liked one time, and it was at a restaurant. And because of this job, I met a lot of friends, I had a lot of fun, and I got like sort of a reputation in my hometown. And if you remember, I grew up in a town of like 2,000 people, so it's not hard to get some sort of reputation there. But my thing was that I had like the most recognizable backside in town, which sounds crass, it sounds weird, but it's only because the way the restaurant was set up, I would like cook like facing away from people when they came in. But like people would be weird and be like, hey, I'd recognize your backside anywhere, like when I'd be out in public. And it made me really self-conscious, but I loved the job. So, you may be aware I've recently changed jobs. So, and by recently I mean like in the last 3 months, not like more recently than that. That would be weird. Yeah. Yeah, on that note, this is actually my, I'm kidding, it's not my last week. That would be weird. I sent a resume to another job at the same, like actually before I sent my stuff here, and they just got back to me this week. They're like, hey, do you want to come interview? And I'm like, asked me 6 months ago, dummy. But anyway, I will not be working. So, we're going to talk about work today. I have one more question for you. What kind of worker are you? If you were going to classify the kind of worker you are, maybe you're a workaholic, somebody who is just really motivated to work, somebody who wants to work a lot, they want to get a lot done, they just feel like work is the most important thing they can do. Is there anybody who would identify themselves as a workaholic? All right. You don't have to say that if you don't feel comfortable. I'm just curious. Next one is a lazy worker. If you're not for sure what a lazy worker is, it's somebody who comes to work and they kind of try. They kind of just do like the bare minimum to get fired, but they're not like, why did you guys laugh? Did Avery put something on the screen when I said that? Okay, just checking. He's got a really guilty look on his face. All right, so a lazy worker, somebody who just does the bare minimum, like they're not like so bad that they should get. I saw it that time. We have a TV in the back now, and I saw it. I don't know what it said, but I saw it. So anyway, the next one is a procrastinator. I don't know about you guys, but I'm just an amateur procrastinator, and I'll probably go pro later. So procrastinator is somebody who puts stuff off. It's so bad. It's bad, right? An amateur procrastinator, yes. So somebody who puts things off to the last minute or the last 2 minutes. Somebody who doesn't work ahead. Somebody who's always like, we've got time, until they don't, and then they kind of freak out. And then the last one we have is working for the weekend, and this is a song apparently, but I kind of feel like a lot of times in my life I fit into this mold where it's like I have to have a job. I don't really care all that much about the job that I'm doing, but I have to have a job and I can't wait for the weekend. And that's really how I felt like when I was in school. Like I'm gonna go to school like Monday and Tuesday, try to fake sick on Wednesday, and I'll go on Thursday and Friday, and then the weekend will be here. So that was pretty much. Maybe I should call the Quincy YMCA. All right, so somebody's calling for me. I do need some new references, so that'll work. All right, so these are the different kind of workers. Maybe you fit into that. There's lots of other different types of workers. If you have like a different way that you feel about the work that you do or the type of work you are, let me know. But with that in mind, I want to take a look at a verse. And I know that we're studying Proverbs on Wednesdays this semester, but the verse that I kind of wanted to use to focus our talk about work comes from Colossians 3. It's Colossians 3, 23 and 24. It says, "Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ." So when I put things in perspective and I look at things through that light, this idea of not working for man, not working for people, but working for the Lord, and I really reflect on that, and I ask myself, like, what kind of worker I am. I hope that I have a good answer for that. And I hope that as we go through this, you all can ponder and think about what kind of worker you are, and that what we learn tonight be something that you can take away, something that you can apply to your life, and something that can just keep you motivated and keep you going and help you to remember that no matter what kind of worker you are, as a Christian, your goal isn't merely to work for people or merely to accomplish earthly things, but you're to work as for the Lord. So, with that in mind, let's take a look at what Proverbs can teach us about work. We've got three different main points. I should know because I wrote these, but 3 main points that we're going to talk about tonight. And the first one is to be an ant and not a sloth. And we're just going to look at Proverbs 6, verses 6 through 11. This is where this idea of being an ant rather than a sloth comes from. This is a passage that I remember from being a kid for some reason. I don't know, maybe I was a sluggard, but I can remember being at my grandparents' house and hearing this passage a lot. And it says, "Go to the ant, O sluggard, consider her ways and be wise. Without having any chief, officer, or ruler, she prepares her bread in the summer and gathers her food in harvest. How long will you lie there, O sluggard? When will you arise from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man." So as we look at this passage here, these 6 verses, or 5 verses, we can see this first idea of being an ant and not a sloth. You were noticing as we read through the passage, it used this word sluggard. I don't know about you, but when I hear the word sluggard, what comes to mind is a slug. All right? And I don't know if any of you are cruel to even the grossest of God's creatures, but I must confess that at one point in life I was a cruel kid, and I thought it was fun to find slugs outside and pour salt on them, and then they would wither up and die. And that has nothing to do with the sermon, but it was just weighing heavily on me, and I needed to make a confession. So now you know. But when I think of the word sluggard, that's what comes to mind, is a slug just crawling across the sidewalk on the back porch of the house and leaving its gooey little silvery trail all over, and just going nowhere and not doing it quickly. And this idea of a slug or sluggard, the word's used 14 times in the Bible, and they all come from the book of Proverbs. And the word is also often translated as slothful. So we have this idea of a slug, something that's not in a hurry to get things done, kind of leaves a mess behind. It doesn't really care about much of anything. So this idea is be an ant and not a sloth. To help kind of put this idea into perspective, I have a couple pictures. The first one is an ant. It's actually 2 ants. I think it's 2 ants on a date because they've got a giant strawberry. I just imagine that this is the most romantic of dates for ants. And soon they will have their own little ant farm together. But they are carrying this strawberry. It's 2 ants carrying a giant strawberry. I'm not a weightlifter. I don't know, maybe Octavio could help me out, but I don't know how much, like, if this was in, like, human terms, how much that would be. I'm just going to imagine it would be like holding a car over your head.
It's like a million. They relative to your body weight, it's like 1,000,000% more strength. Yeah.
So it's a lot, basically. I'm not going to do 1,000,000 times my body weight. That's a lot. So we have the ant. So be an ant, and don't be a sluggard. Don't be a sloth. And we've got a picture of a sloth, not a slug. So the sloth is cute, right? But it kind of just looks like a living log. He's just laying there. He's got nowhere to go, nothing to do. And that is no way to live your life. So be an ant and not a sloth. And another way to think about this, going back to Colossians 3 again, if you're in the workplace, you don't want to be a sloth. You don't want to be a sluggard. You don't want to be that person that your coworkers look at as a sloth or a sluggard. You want to be an ant, someone that they can rely on, someone that they know that they can trust. And with that in mind, like, when you have a job or when you're in school, like your classmates, your coworkers, they know you. They most likely know that you're a Christian if you've spent any time with them. And not only are your actions or the things that you say looked at through that lens, but your work ethic and the way that you go about the things that you do are looked at in that same lens. This idea of if you aren't giving your job your best effort, not only is that a poor representation on you, but it's a poor representation on Christ, and it's a poor representation of Christians. So, with that in mind, be an ant, not a sloth, and look at your workplace as a mission field. There's a couple of verses from Proverbs that kind of tell us what the opposite effect is. So not when you're being an ant, but rather when you're being the sloth or being the slug. The first one is Proverbs 10:26. It says, like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to those who send him. I don't know a whole lot about vinegar on your teeth. The only thing I really know about vinegar is it's like one of the 3 things that I can smell right now. I've never been excited to smell vinegar until I had COVID, and then I couldn't smell anything, and I thought, there's a bottle of vinegar in the cabinet, and I take a big old whiff. And sure enough, I could barely smell it. And so I don't know a lot about vinegar, but in a situation where you can't smell anything, but you can still smell vinegar, it's something that's strong. And I know that it's acidic, so this idea of vinegar on your teeth, people use vinegar to clean things, to like get gunk and grime off of like old pennies. And I don't think that's something that you want to put on your teeth. You don't want that like hanging out in your mouth a lot. Also, it doesn't taste good. So I don't know a lot about vinegar on my teeth, but I know a lot about smoke in my eyes. And there's nothing worse than having smoke in your eyes when you're like at a bonfire or at a weenie roast. And that's what it says that a sluggard is like in those situations. It's like vinegar on your teeth or smoke in your eyes. In Proverbs 20, verse 4, it goes on to say, a sluggard does not plow in the autumn. He will seek at harvest and have nothing. So a sluggard or slothful person is someone who isn't working. They aren't planning ahead. They aren't doing the work beforehand. And when it comes time for harvest, they have nothing. They're left without what they need. They haven't properly planned ahead. So our first lesson from Proverbs tonight is to be an ant and not a sloth. The second one is a quick buck can get you stuck. Proverbs 12, verse 11 says, whoever works his land will have plenty of bread, but he who follows worthless pursuits lacks sense. Proverbs 13:4, the soul of the sluggard craves to get nothing, but the soul of the diligent is richly supplied. Proverbs 14:23, in all toil there is profit, but mere talk tends only to poverty. So we have this idea of quick buck can get you stuck. And I don't know if you've ever known anybody that was like always talking about like ways to make money, but never actually like working to make money. I'm not going to name names, but if you were here last week, I talked about a friend who would fit this category. And it's always this idea of trying to do the least amount of work possible for the most amount of money. And it's these like big schemes and big plans that never has any kind of follow through. And it's fun to sit and dream about the future and have ideas, but if that's all you're doing and you're not actually putting any work into it, then it's not going to get accomplished. The idea here is that if you're sitting around thinking about big ideas, but you're not actually putting in work, you can't just talk about it and expect it to happen. So the idea is that if you have a dream or an idea about something, that's awesome and that's great. We absolutely want to encourage that. The idea is that you should have a plan, some sort of action to go ahead and do it. But if your whole idea is you're going to sit around and you're going to wait for some way to get rich, or you're going to wait your whole life to win the lottery, you're not going to have what you need. A quick buck can get you stuck. And what that means simply is this idea of like easy money or trying to come across money without putting in the work isn't going to lead to long-term success. There are some situations where getting rich quick can work. It can be successful, but it's probably not the way that we think of it. It's probably not going to be the way that we want it to be. There's a guy named Bernie Madoff. Has anybody ever heard of Bernie Madoff? All right, so he was like a famous Bernie before Bernie Sanders, okay? He's like the original Bernie that everyone talked about. They even kind of have like the same hairstyle. The thing about Bernie Madoff is his last name's really fitting because Bernie made off with like billions of dollars from other people. He had this scheme, a Ponzi scheme. Has anybody ever heard of a Ponzi scheme? I don't really know how Ponzi schemes work. I don't think I've ever been in one, and I don't think I've ever ran one. But the way I understand it is, a Ponzi scheme, you have somebody who like recruits investors, and then those investors like give that person money, and then they like recruit more investors, and then more investors, and like basically some people make money off of it, but the guy that started it, in this case Bernie Madoff, he's making tons of money, and everybody else is just hoping there are more and more suckers that are going to jump in, because it's like 2 levels after you join is when you start getting paid, and the more people that join, the more money that you make. But the whole thing is just this scam to take money from people and enrich the person at the top, and to do it through ill-gotten means. It's not honest. And with Bernie Madoff, he wound up with like $165 billion of not his money. And he was doing this for like a really long time. He started an investment company in 1960, and he was finally like found out and arrested in 2008. So he was an investor that would recruit people to invest with him. And some people made a lot of money doing it. And there was some legitimacy to some of the investments that he was making. But he was promising bigger returns than anybody else. And through that, getting more interest, getting more money in. And then he was padding his own pockets, padding the pockets of his family, and doing it through ways that he was getting rich quick, but this get rich quick scheme for everybody else wasn't working. So 2008, he was found out, he was arrested, and he was sentenced to 150 years in prison. I don't know anybody that's lived to be 150 years old. Judging from the picture of Bernie Madoff, I don't want to assume anything, but I'm just guessing he's not going to make it 150 years and get released. So basically, this scheme in the end, he himself even called it one big lie. This one big lie that ripped off people, that caught people trying to get rich quick, is going to cost him the rest of his life in prison. Also, some of his family members went to prison. He had a son, I think, sentenced to 10 years in prison. He had another son who, rather than facing prison, committed suicide. So this whole idea of getting rich quick, eventually it caught up to Bernie Madoff. It ruined his family, it ruined his life, and it ruined the lives of so many people who had tried to buy into it. A quick buck can get you stuck. And this really ties into the last point. Not only can a quick buck get you stuck, but dirty hands, or dirty money equals dirty hands. And I know that all money is dirty. It's like the grossest thing that we touch on a daily basis, which with 3 kids, 5 and under, I kind of disagree with that assessment, but I'll take the expert's word for it. This idea of not only getting stuck trying to get money quickly, but getting money through ill-gotten means is something that makes our hands dirty, something that incriminates us, something that makes us guilty. I mean, it comes straight from Proverbs. Proverbs 10:2 says, "Treasures gained by wickedness do not profit, but righteousness delivers from death." And the thing about ill-gotten means, the thing about money that you've acquired in a way that isn't right, is there's initial value in that money. If you take the money out of my wallet and put it in your pocket, like there's initial value for you there. Like there's more money now than you had before. But Proverbs 10:2 tells us that these treasures, they don't equal profit. Instead, this wealth that has initial value, or this is, it causes intrinsic harm, and it's something that it's just something that isn't going to lead you down a path of success. It's going to lead you into a path of harm. Proverbs 13:11 tells us that wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little will increase it. A couple weeks ago, when we were talking about money, I talked about how there are these famous athletes who, despite making millions of dollars playing sports, they've gone broke, and it's become like a part of a documentary on ESPN. All these stories about famous rich athletes who, once their playing career was over, once those days were done, the money wasn't there. And a lot of it was bad investments or trusting the wrong person to invest their money, going back again to, people profiting off of the money of others. But this whole idea of wealth gained hastily dwindling and going away, and having more money than what you know what to do with sometimes means you literally don't know what to do with it. And rather than saving it, rather than storing it, rather than making a plan, the money's just gone. To put this in another way, I don't know if you've ever had like a gift card for a restaurant or a gift card to go shopping. At some point in life, my family stopped buying me gifts and started giving me gift cards. And if I would get a gift card to a restaurant, like, I'm treating that gift card way different than I would if I was treating like money out of my own pocket. And in some ways, that's the idea behind a gift card is, hey, treat yourself, splurge a little. But in some other ways, like, I had nothing to do with earning that money. It was just given to me. And I didn't treat it the way that I would treat money that I'd worked hard for. Now, there's something about working hard for something, being compensated for that, that builds this idea of taking care of it and wanting to steward it well. And as we talked about, when we talked about money, and we talked about the rich and the poor, the whole idea of the money that we have is making sure that we're good stewards of what God has given us, and that we are properly using that money, and we're properly saving it, properly giving back to the Lord, and properly caring for those in need. As Proverbs 13:11 says here, wealth gained hastily will dwindle, and it's quickly gone. So we know that wealth has initial value, but it quickly goes away. And the last thing here, Proverbs 27 talks about bread gained by deceit is sweet to a man, but afterwards his mouth will be full of gravel. When I read this verse, sometimes in the verse, or sometimes in the Bible, verses will become very visceral for me. It's I can feel what is being written here, and this idea of a mouthful of gravel really stuck with me. So this idea of, have you ever taken a bite of something that you thought was going to be delicious and it was absolutely terrible? Baking chocolate was one of those things for me. So I remember being a kid and being at a friend's house, and for some reason, my friend's mom had made this giant bowl of sliced apples. So I helped myself. Turns out that they were sliced potatoes. And I like potatoes, but not raw, so it wasn't very good. I used to play a game when I was working with junior high and high school students where we would blindfold people and then tell them we were giving them an apple and it would be an onion.
Oh.
So just this idea of thinking something is going to be sweet, thinking something is going to be good, and it quickly turns on you. All right, so Proverbs 27, bread gained by deceit is sweet to a man, but afterwards his mouth will be full of gravel. There is something about feeling like you're getting away with doing something. We talked about this last week. I can't deny that sometimes when I do something I'm not supposed to, there is a little bit of a thrill at the beginning, but it is immediately replaced by guilt and this nagging, stinking feeling. That sweet taste in my mouth is quickly replaced by a mouthful of gravel. And that brings us to the third thing about dirty money equaling dirty hands, and that is the mirage of easy money. I don't know if you guys have ever seen a mirage. Probably the closest thing I've ever seen is when it's really hot in the summer and you're driving down the road and you can kind of see the heat waves ahead. That's the closest I've ever been to it, but I've seen a lot of mirages depicted in movies or especially cartoons where somebody's in the desert and they're getting thirstier and thirstier and thirstier, and there's no relief to be found. There's no water anywhere. And then off in the distance, there's the most beautiful pool you've ever seen, and 3 or 4 palm trees just right next to the water, providing the perfect amount of shade. And the character will run to the water and they'll dive in. And if it's a cartoon, Bugs Bunny or something, they'll be swimming in the water, and then they slowly begin to realize as the picture slowly changes that they're not actually swimming in water, but it's they're swimming in sand, and that big drink of water they just took is really just a mouthful of sand. And this idea that easy money is a mirage. It looks like the real thing. It looks like something that's good. But in the end, it leaves you with a mouth full of gravel. It leaves you with disappointment. It leaves you with hurt. And the dirty money leaves you with dirty hands. So we have these 3 ideas. Being an ant instead of a sloth. Not allowing a quick buck to get you stuck. Not allowing your hands to become dirty from dirty money, or from getting money in ways that are inappropriate. And those are the things that Proverbs can teach us about work. But how can we apply what Proverbs teaches us about work? How can we take this and put it into practice in our lives? It's easy to say, like, don't be a jerk at work, don't steal money, don't lie about your hours, or don't, sneak some money out of the cash register when you think nobody's looking. Those are all easy things that we all know. But what are ways that we can be proactive and ways that we can apply what Proverbs teaches us in our work? I think the first thing is that when we go to work, when we do work, when we go to our classes and do schoolwork, whatever it is that we do, we need to look at work as a form of worship. We go back to Colossians 3 again. All that we do should be done as for God rather than for men. When we work, people look at us. People make judgments about our character based on the way that we work. And we want the way that we work to be a reflection of the God that we worship. So we can praise God through our work. Even if it seems like you're stuck in a job that doesn't really matter, or if you're in class that you don't really need for the future, it's just something that you have to do to meet some sort of prerequisite or some sort of requirement for graduation. We can look at our work in that class or our work in that job where we feel stuck as worship, because we're giving our all, because that's what God's created us to do. The second thing that we can do is we can look at work as a witness. And we've touched on this a couple times before, but when people look at you in the workplace, even if you're in a job where it's easy to take a shortcut and you're somebody who doesn't take the shortcut, or you're dealing with customers and having dealt with customers, they're difficult. It's hard to be patient, it's hard to be kind, especially I used to work in a cell phone store, and we would have certain customers that would have the same problem every month. Specifically, I didn't pay my bill and then turned my phone off. Well, there's this thing called a bill. You have to pay it, and then they leave your phone off. It was just a constant battle, and it was so hard to be patient and kind and to try to be loving in a situation where I knew I was going to get yelled at or cussed at, and somebody was going to blame me for turning off their phone. I'm like, dude, I'm here for $10 an hour. I have no control over whether your phone's on or not. Just please pay your bill. And I would help people. I would help set up arrangements. And a lot of times I would hear things like, you're too nice. And why are you so nice to these people? They're not paying their bill. And at the time, my answer was, I'm just a nice person. Because I wasn't brave enough to say, well, I'm nice because Jesus loves this person, even though, they've got mess in their lives and they're not being responsible. I wasn't able to say that. And a lot of times I feel like I dropped the ball in this area, being able to be a witness to my coworkers or be a witness to customers that I helped. And I think a big part of that is the third thing that we can learn from what Proverbs teaches us about work. And I wasn't looking at work as a mission. I was looking at work as simply a job or just a way to pay the bills or to make some money. Or in the case of my job I had in high school, a way to get free food and ice cream. It was pretty sweet. I didn't look at work as a mission. I wasn't looking at it as this is something that I can do to reach others for Christ, to share Christ with others. I wasn't looking for those opportunities. I was punching in and then kind of counting down the time until it was time to punch out. And that's when I thought my life would start, when I got off work. We talked about working for the weekend earlier, and I wasn't necessarily working for the weekend, but I was definitely working for 5 o'clock every day, just on autopilot. I've got to get through this day so that I can go live my life. And frankly, I wasted a lot of time at a lot of different jobs, and it wasn't because those jobs were a waste of time necessarily. It was more that I was just sitting rather than looking for opportunities to live out this idea of work as a mission, rather than looking for ideas to have my work and the job that I did be worship to God or be a way to witness to others. I was just simply passing the time until it was time to go home. So I read a lot of Entertainment Weekly magazines when times were slow. I got really good at Sudoku puzzles. Once I figured out how to say Sudoku instead of calling it Sudoku. I think that's what, I don't know. Anyway, I wasted a lot of time because I wasn't looking at life, I wasn't looking at work as a mission. In Ephesians 2:10, I'm going to leave you with this verse tonight before you go to your small groups. It says, "For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them." This idea that life isn't some big accident, and the jobs and the classes that you're in, the work that you have, isn't by chance. Like, those are opportunities that have been placed in your life for you to do good works. Not so that people look at you like, man, that Al's really got things together. It's not like that. It's like Al is different. Like, he's happy about this job. He loves people. He cares about people. I want to know what that's about. It's an idea of living life and going through the work and the jobs that we do with a mission in mind. And that mission to be to share the gospel of Jesus Christ and to let other people know that they're loved by their Creator and He has a plan and a purpose for them. So we're going to go to small groups at this time, but before we do, I would like to pray for you. You bow with me. Lord God, we thank you for tonight. We thank you for this time to come together. I thank you for everyone that's here. I thank you for everyone that's watching online on YouTube. Lord, I just ask that as we go to small groups, that our conversations would be edifying conversations, that we would build each other up, and that we would build each other in our relationships with you, that we would grow closer to you, and we would know that we are loved, and that we would share that love with others. Lord, I thank you for Jesus. I thank you for sending your Son. I thank you for the celebration of Easter that we just had. And I thank you that one day we can all be in your glory together. And I pray for these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. You are dismissed. Have a great